Hello and welcome to the next webinar in our series of webinars from MISO, talking about how you can get more out of your FME. Okay, so this is the second webinar in the series called Metadata Harvester. If you want to go back to any of the previous ones, so our first one last week, you can go back into the lounge and see the video webinar 1. Okay, so if you want to comment on either that video or this video, just hit that reply button in the lounge and ask a question. Okay, I'll be answering questions for half an hour after this webinar is finished, but if you want to ask any questions after that, just post there and we'll pick it up and answer them for you. Okay, so let's get going. I'm Mike Robbins here, a software engineer at MISO. So today, we're talking about metadata harvester. So the business problem, you've got multiple departments all working on different systems, maybe old legacy systems, or they're inputting data differently. So this lack of visibility between your different departments can mean that when you need a piece of information or need some data, you might be redoing it, covering old ground, or just approaching it from different directions. So you end up with two pieces of data with differing results. Okay. This can lead to a number of different issues. So again, duplication, you're wasting time, money, and the validity, whether it's just in how it's been created. Okay? So you need, again, a very quick, straightforward way to identify what you've got available to you, either on your own computer or on a network drive. So the solution, again, FME Workspace that can sit on desktop so you can run yourself, or sit on a server so people can query, say, the network drives whenever they want. Of course, if it's on the server, you need to make sure the server has network access or network rights so it can read all those network drives. So a way to crawl through your network and quickly identify all the data sets that might be of interest to you, perform basic interrogation. So we could develop a big workspace that will look into each file, open it up, have a look at the features inside, but you're looking at hundreds or thousands of different data sets on your network, and to go into each one of those could be very costly, very slow. So we're just basic interrogation so you can see where it is, whether it's a spatial file, a shape file, a tab file, or an Excel file, when it was made, when it was modified, so is it up to date, and whether you can actually use it or move it or access it at all. Okay, so this report you could use to say if it's relevant to you, if you could use it, or even if a product that is developed every year, 2008, 2009, and so on, and you could see, well, it's been made every year and then stops and then continues. Why did we miss out that year? You can answer all those questions. So solution in our FME workspace, we're going to use a path reader. So that reader will just read the paths in a file system. Any other data, just the file name and any other information, which we can do by setting it up in the Navigator pane, which I'll show you in a second. Then we can talk about managing that data, to use FME to sort it for you. So it's already sorted by file size, things like that. Formatting it so it looks a bit better. So for instance, the file size will come out as one big byte string. So a few megabytes is going to come out and a few thousand bytes. Yeah, so it'll be quite unreadable. So formatting that to be easier to see, easier to use. And then again, how you output that. Do you want it as a report? So you can see these are the data. This is the data on my network. Or do you just want to use the data inspector just for your own use? Quickly find, identify, yep, that's what I need to use. That's the one most up to date. I'm going to use that. Okay, so let's jump into FME. And here's our workspace. So I'll go through the Navigator side first. We've got our FME path reader over here, and it's linked to one of our network drives where we store all our different FME versions. Okay, to use an example. The key parts in the parameters is a path filter, which is linked up to a custom parameter, which I'll show you in a second. allowed path type, which can be either a file, a directory, or both files and directories. So you can see all the folders, all the files. But we're just going to look at the files because the files are what we're interested in, so we'll look at files. And more importantly, this is defaulted to no retrieve file properties. Without this, we don't get as much information, but by setting it to yes, FME can probe a little bit further into that file and give us a bit more information. Okay? So the parameters I've set up to make this a little bit more generic, easier to use from a user point of view, we've got our source and our destination, which, as you know, is always created when you create a reader or create a writer, source and destination. And I've made a few more. A sort attribute, so you can decide which attribute you want to sort on, when it was accessed, when it was created, the file name, the file size. Yeah, this can all be set up. What type of sort? So if it's by file name, we'll have to have it as an alphabetic sort. But if we're sorting it by size, so we only want to see the biggest or the smallest files, we need to set it by numeric. Or indeed say, I don't want it sorted, I'm going to sort it later in Excel or the data inspector, so I want it as no sort. Okay. And then, do I want it to be recursive? Okay, so this is just a yes/no option. So the user can say, yes, I do want it to be recursive, move into every folder that you find, keep searching for that search term. Just a yes/no at the moment. And then that path filter, which is set to just be a wildcard, so it'll search everything, but you could say anything that's got a shape extension or anything that's a text file. Okay. So this private parameter is actually a tiny bit of Python script, which I've linked up to the path reader's path filter at the top. So this Python script, let's just show that, is a Python script as a parameter, and it's just these 4 lines. And it's just to say, if the user has selected yes on recursive, then I'm going to set a double wildcard as that parameter. So when we run it, if they selected yes, then in the path filter for the path reader, it will be ** and star.text, for instance. Otherwise, if they don't want it to be recursive, they just want to look in the folder that's there, I just return the path filter, star.text. Okay? So I can use this Python script to see what the user has already set in their options and then return something else. Okay? So those are all the options. That's what they'll see. I want to go to this folder. I'm going to output my report here. I want to search on when it was last accessed. I don't want to sort it. Yes, I want to descend into folders. Okay, so just a few options to make it a little bit easier to use. So into the workspace, how we've made it. We've got our path reader with all of these different attributes. So the full path in Windows or in Unix, the root name, the full file name, just the extension, all these extra attributes. But we're just going to use a subset to keep that report a little bit smaller. So I'm going to use an attribute keeper to just say, I want to keep these, and the rest, get rid of. I don't want to use them. Okay? After that, I go into a sort. So I've got a test filter in here just to make it a little bit more readable. And I've set up a few tests to say if the publish parameter letter number is alphabetic, so that's our sort, or if go out of the alphabetic port, if it's selected numeric, go out of the numeric port. Otherwise, they must have selected nothing or no sort, so go out of the no sort port. So if they selected no sort, we'll bypass our sorts. If they've selected alphabetic or numeric, go into the relevantly set up sorter. So one for alphabetic, one for numeric. Okay, but it's interesting to note these sorters are group-based. So if you're throwing a lot of features down there, they're going to be caught up in that sorter or those sorters and be held there. It won't be as memory intensive as if you're sending a shape file down or anything with heavy geometry, because it's just text strings, essentially. Very small bits of data, but it'll still hold it up, still cause a memory increase. Okay, so keep in mind. So once we've done our sort, or we've bypassed it, we're going to go into a date formatter, so those dates become a bit more readable. So I've said these three attributes, the path access, created and modified, select those, don't know what format I'm in, so there's only one option, automatic detection. FME will detect what format it is in, and then create a string for me. So this is how it's formatted. I've selected a timestamp format, so there's year, month, day, then a letter T, hour, minutes, and seconds. You can select any of these options, and it will give you that time as that string. Okay, so once we've formatted time, we go into a little bit of Python, not as much as last time, but a little bit of Python. And there's two routes you can go. We can go into a bit of Python where the logic is already there. So this is how we format the bytes into something more readable. Okay, so a lot of the work is already out there, just takes a Google search to find. So this function, probably don't need to understand it, but you can paste it in and it'll do exactly the same job as the other one that I'll show in a second. But what's the same in both is I get Python to get the value from the file size, put it into formatted size, then pass it to this function here. So self size of, and then pass in formatted size. That'll give me a nice formatted string, so it'll say whether it's in kilobytes or megabytes and so on. And then I replace path file size with that new formatted string and then output it. Okay? So it's a very small little bit of code. Alternatively, because a lot of the data has already been written, those functions have already been made, you don't need to think about the logic yourself, it's already there. So there's a couple of libraries called Humanize or Hurry, which does this exact thing, formatting a big byte string into something more readable. Okay, but it doesn't come bundled with FME. You need something that you Google, you find, and you've got to download it and drop it in. So a really easy way to drop it in, because FME's made it so easy to do that, is you download the file, you go to zip, you unpack it until you've got just a Humanize folder. So I've used Humanize. So in this Humanize folder, there's an init, which will always come with any Python package, and then its various Python files. Okay, all you need to do is drop that into your FME installation, into the Python folder, just there. No extra customization or setup is needed. Just drop it in, and then when FME launches, it will use it if you call it. So the same way as before, import Humanize, because now the package is there, and then they'll do exactly the same as before. There isn't a big bit of Python code to confuse things. It's just Humanize, the function was called natural size, I pass in formatted size as I did before, and I overwrite it as I did before. And all the work is done for me. Okay, so you don't need to create that logic for yourself. There's most likely already packages out there. Okay, and then at the end, it's how do you want to output it? Output it to an Excel where you could style this different attributes for yourself. So whether it's green or red, or just make it a bit more pretty. Or if you're just using it for yourself, output it into the data inspector so you can quickly see the data. So here's data inspector. This is our search on our FME folder. So we've got FME from 2003 all the way up to a 2015 build. Okay, so we've got the full path. So if I find the one that I want, it's, yep, copy all of that, paste it into File Explorer, and I'm there straight away. I can see that's what it's called. The path size, so how big it is. That's Humanize working for us. Instead of a big byte string, it's just into megabytes for us. Who owns it? So whether it's someone's been pasting stuff off as an administrator, or whether it's been our own David Whiteside pasting stuff in, whether I could access that at all. So is it read-only, or can I actually use it? And then all of our timestamps are modified dates. So is it a nice string that we could use? So we could sort this in Data Inspector, so I can see the oldest one all the way up to the newest one in 2016, the 20th, a few days ago. Someone's downloading a zipped up version of FME. Okay? But the reason we do the sort, or there's an option to do the sort in FME, is because if we do it outside, say in Data Inspector here, or in Excel, for instance, 856 bytes isn't bigger than 756 megabytes. Okay? But here, because it's sorted after the fact, that number is bigger. But before we format it in our sort, it's still that big byte string. So if we do the sort here, before we format it, when we get the data at the end, it will already be in the correct order. Okay? So, quick overview. The path reader can be used for searching, as I've just shown, or chunking out data. So if you've got a big folder full of Excel spreadsheets or text files that you want to run through FME and do something with, it's really good for splitting up that process. So you don't have to read everything in at the same time. You can use a path reader and a Workspace runner to just process one file at a time. That helps with memory and it helps with speed. Okay? And there's those extra settings in the path reader so you can see what makes up that file, or when it was made, is it the correct, most up-to-date file for you, for your needs. Different ways to format. You could use the transformers, so the date formatter. You could use some string operation transformers to remove spaces, as we did last week, or just remove certain words and characters. Or could use Python, either in just Python logic, or find the library out there, drop it into FME, and away you go. The thing to note with Python libraries is if you share the workspace around, those other people will need the same Python libraries. And if they don't, FME won't run, but it will give you an error saying, I don't know what Humanize is, I don't know what Hurry is. And then that gives the user, right, I need to get a Python library called Humanize or called Hurry. And then they can drop that in, it'll work. Caution of group transformers again, just in case you see a massive memory increase or FME is crashing, it's because of those group transformers, and find a different way around to solve that issue. And then how do you want to output that? Either as a report to present to someone to say this is the state of our storage, state of our files, whether things are up to date or not, or whether you just want to use the data inspector to quickly say, I need to look for a spatial file and it's somewhere on this drive, I don't know where it is, run this quickly, all right, that's the one I want, it's the newest one, I'll use that. Okay, key benefits, so improve visibility, you can see everything and where it's located, whether it's new or not. You can, as I said, either just your network or just your computer or both, depends how you set up that first parameter where you're looking at. Allows you to use that data to support your current projects, so you don't have to keep redoing or covering the same ground. And because you're finding already created data, you don't have, you save that money. Okay, and you can use that to spend elsewhere or just allocate resources accordingly a bit better. Okay, so improves visibility. It's a small workspace, so it's not as in-depth as the last one. It's a bit quicker, a bit more simple to set up. There's less Python code, a bit easier to understand. You've got different ways to format the data, as I said. And you can search for different data types. So if you just want to look for tab files or just want to look for text files, that will speed up the whole process and get you right to the data that you need or data that you can use. Okay, so thank you for listening. I hope that was useful and you could follow that a bit better. If you have any questions, do comment below. I'll reply to the initial post below. You can view this pretty much immediately. There might take a couple of seconds for YouTube to process the video to store it properly. Next time, we're talking about a single view of a citizen, which is similar to the first webinar, but less Python, and it's how to do it in feature mergers and the pitfalls that you could fall into or see. Okay, so I'll see you next time.